United Free and Accepted Masons of Washington. My name is Very Worshipful Bud Cook, and I will be the interviewer, and our audio-video operator and video editor is Most Worshipful Brother G. Santi Lascano. And we are honored to be here with Most Worshipful Brother Harold B. Tucker, our Grand Master in the year 1988 and 1989. Most Worshipful, first allow me to thank you for taking part in participating in this Grand Lodge History Project.
It's my pleasure.
The first question, Most Worshipful, what prompted you to become a Freemason?
I think it was my father and my grandfather and my uncles were all Masons, and they're just the way that they acted and their demeanor made me kind of feel that they were something special.
Yeah, I can understand that quite well. How did you come by the design of your Masonic Grand Pin?
I wondered about something different that Masonry was starting to get away from, and that was the family of Masonry. I wanted to the point where people or the brethren would be cooperative, not only as Brother Masons, but in their other activities as Scottish Rite, York Rite, and Shrindom.
I understand that quite well. What was the theme for your year as Grand Master?
Theme was the family of Freemasonry and the universality of Masonry as a whole. That all of the Scottish Rite and the Shrine and the York Rite, all of the Masonic affiliations could live together as Masons should live together.
Good answer. What were some major goals that you wanted to pursue during your term?
I wanted Washington Masonry to come back to being Washington Masonry. It was getting to the point of where some were coming from California, Oregon, Idaho, and affiliating with us, and by the Masons from those districts and their way of reporting things and the words that they used were somewhat different than Masonry in the state of Washington. And in Washington, every state is a sovereign unto themselves, and when you start putting in other jurisdictions words into your Masonry, then you're taking away from what Masonry does in the state of Washington. And one of the things that gets me, and that is when you say Most Worshipful and you don't say Most Worshipful Brother, because that Most Worshipful is Oregon and California work, and that's what has creeped up into Washington and is used so much now. And you go into a lodge. To me, it takes some of the respect away from it because you're cutting down their title. I find it in lodges now where they'll say worshipful instead of worshipful master when they speak of him in lodge. And I think this is degrading for the state of Washington to use those words and not use what is in our ciphers and in our code that says that this is the titles. And the same with Deputy of the Grand Master. This is one of the few states that calls us the deputy of the Grand Master. Others call them district deputies or district deputy Grand Masters, and that has creeped in now that they all say they're all district deputies. They're deputies of the Grand Master in X number.
Yeah, I understand.
And I think it's time that we started coming back to being Washington Masons.
I understand that totally. What were the challenges of your term?
I think the main challenges were when I had to use the code and do things that hurt me to have to do to brethren. I had to replace a Grand Master and then have them press charges on him. I had to work on another lodge that their past master and their master was doing wrong to correct those things. I was sued by the Nile Temple because of the lodge in Seattle, and they were having troubles. And that was my biggest problem. I had that weight over my shoulders the full year I was in. And then when it came time for me to go out, and I had my Grand Lodge in Spokane, that potentate came to lodge and dropped the charges at that time. And so it took the whole year he kept me under this spell, and that was disturbing as anything to me.
See what it would be. What are your favorite memories as a Grand Master?
Favorite memories of Grand Master first was to be elected as Grand Master by the brethren of this state, and then to be able to visit lodges and go to some lodges that the Grand Master had never been to. And when I was Grand Master, we had 6 lodges in Alaska. And I was the first Grand Master in 5 years that had the opportunity to go to Petersburg for their meeting, their district meeting, because it rained so much there that the other Grand Masters were not able to get there. I was the one that was able to get there. Rained while I was there, but we were able to get in and out. And it was a real thrill to be with those brethren in Petersburg.
Yeah, I understand that. Does the man make the office, or the office make the man?
The office makes the man. The man does not make the office. The man does the best that he can. But when he's through, and from all of his visitations and touching of so many Masons, not only in this state, but in other states as well, other Grand Masters and their brethren, this is what makes a man. Makes him realize that there is a lot much more to Masonry than we think that there is.
What is it like being Grand Master?
To me, it was a duty that I had to the brethren of the state of Washington. And I was, as being their head, it was my duty to treat myself and act so that I uplifted this brethren in his state. And that was what was important to me, that I wasn't so big that I was any better than any of the other brethren, because I wasn't, and I still am not, because they made me their Grand Master, and it was up to me to act as such as they wished for me to act.
Who was of the greatest help to you as Grand Master?
I think there were a few, but the main help to me was Wayne Deming. I could go to Wayne at any time and get nothing but good advice. He was a help. The two just ahead of me, were somewhat of a help, but in a funny sort of way, because it was Jeff Ensworth and Mark Ewing. They were just ahead of me, and they supported me during my year. In fact, we went to Australia. We were invited to Australia for 3 weeks, and they went along. And while we were down there, they were going to have a meeting, going to have the new Grand Master installed, and they had a 12-page booklet to tell what was going to go on that day. While we were getting our uniforms or our regalia on, one of the brethren came up to me and says, "Grand Master, you better look at page 12. I looked in there and it says the address will be by Most Worshipful Brother Harold Tucker. I had 12 minutes to figure out what I was going to say. So I went to those two past Grand Masters and I said, "My goodness, what should I say?" And their report to me was, "You can say anything you want, but if you aren't through in 10 minutes, you're going home alone." So that was the kind of advice that I got from those two. But they really meant it, that they were there to help. It was an experience down there with those Australians that made Masonry mean that much more to us also.
Do you come from a Masonic family?
I came from a Masonic family, very much so. I had father and grandfather and several of my uncles that were Masons. And then after I went in, I had two of my brothers who also went in after I did. I was fortunate enough to go to Illinois, where I am from, and install one of my brothers as master of his lodge.
That's good. All right. What important Masonic changes did you see in your career?
I saw quite a bit of change in the way that Masonry is today compared to what it was when I was back going through the chairs, when I went into lodge, and what is expected now from what it was then. And I'm a little disturbed with the way it is now, because back then you had to learn the work, and I mean learn it. And now they've gotten away from that to a certain extent, and to me that's sad.
Did you have any reservations about becoming a Freemason?
Had none at all. In fact, I was at work and went to a restaurant, and there was a man there with a ring on. And I told him, I said that my dad was a Mason, and he said, "Well, why aren't you?" And I said, "Well, I just don't know anybody to ask." And he said, "You have now." And that's the way that I became a Mason here. My father knew nothing of it back in Illinois, and the thrill of me was when I was deputy of the Grand Master, my father came out and sat in lodge with me while I was deputy of the Grand Master here, and that was just before he passed away. So.
That's excellent. That's interesting. Have you helped others become involved in Masonry?
Very much so. I don't know. I hope that I have in my way of living, that I have been something of a light to Masonry for others. I have brought many into Masonry, and it has meant quite a bit to me. But the thing that also that has helped me is that I became a minister, and they appointed me as chaplain Elkativ Shrine. I've been the chaplain for 22 years, and I think in that time that I've made quite a difference to a lot of those Shriners too.
Is there anything that you want to talk about that we may not have discussed?
I don't think so, other than the fact that I would like to see that masonry in Washington to come back to masonry in Washington. To get away from these little side issues that have crept in and taken hold, as I can see, throughout the state. It has gone that way, and I'd like to see it come back to where we do masonry work. And forget, let these other jurisdictions do theirs their way, because that's what keeps us separate and a little part of us that is not them, and that means much to me.
Most worshipful, what message would you like to send to today's Mason?
That they learn their masonry and live by their masonry, and by so doing, they're being a great support to their wives, their family, their children, and to their community. And if they can be of help to all of this, then masonry has meant something to them.
Most worshipful, in the name of our Grand Lodge and those who are involved with this project, I want to thank you for your participation in this history project.